The 2023 Gaza war did not erupt in a vacuum. It was a culmination of decades of tension, violence, and failed peace efforts. It was the latest chapter in a century-long struggle between Israelis and Palestinians, a conflict that has seen numerous wars, uprisings, and peace attempts. This conflict is deeply rooted in competing claims to the same land, with both sides holding historical and emotional ties to the region. The Zionist movement, seeking a Jewish homeland, clashed with the aspirations of the Arab population in Palestine, who had lived there for generations. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War led to Israel's creation, but also resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. The Nakba remains a pivotal moment in Palestinian collective memory, symbolizing loss and displacement. Subsequent wars in 1967 and 1973 further solidified Israel's control over the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, territories Palestinians envisioned for their future state. These territories have been at the heart of the conflict, with Palestinians seeking sovereignty and Israelis citing security concerns. The Oslo Accords in the 1990s offered a glimmer of hope, aiming for a two-state solution. However, the peace process faltered, mired in complexities like the status of Jerusalem, Palestinian refugees' right of return, and continued Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank. These issues have remained unresolved, fueling ongoing tensions and periodic outbreaks of violence. The rise of Hamas in Gaza, deemed a terrorist organization by Israel, the US, and others, further complicated the situation. Hamas's control of Gaza, coupled with its commitment to armed resistance against Israel, fueled a cycle of violence and mistrust. This cycle of violence has led to numerous conflicts, with each side suffering casualties and destruction. The 2023 war, therefore, must be understood within this historical context of displacement, occupation, and failed peace attempts. This history of conflict created deep-seated grievances and insecurities on both sides. Palestinians chafed under Israeli occupation, facing restrictions on movement, economic hardship, and the expansion of Israeli settlements they viewed as illegal. These conditions have fostered a sense of injustice and resistance among Palestinians. Israel, on the other hand, pointed to security concerns, particularly rocket attacks from Gaza and acts of terrorism, as justification for its actions. The Israeli government has emphasized the need to protect its citizens from these threats. The stage for the 2023 war was set against this backdrop of mutual suspicion and animosity, with both sides entrenched in their positions and wary of each other's intentions. Understanding this complex history is crucial to comprehending the current conflict and the challenges that lie ahead in seeking a lasting peace. Tensions were already simmering in the months leading up to the 2023 war, with a series of incidents that heightened the already volatile atmosphere. Clashes between Palestinians and Israeli forces in Jerusalem, particularly around the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, a site holy to both Muslims and Jews, inflamed religious sensitivities and led to widespread unrest. The potential eviction of Palestinian families from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in East Jerusalem further fueled Palestinian anger. This was viewed as part of a larger Israeli policy to displace them from Jerusalem, exacerbating the already tense situation. Hamas exploited these grievances, positioning itself as the defender of Palestinian rights and Islam's holy sites. They rallied support by highlighting the injustices faced by Palestinians. Israel, meanwhile, accused Hamas of inciting violence and using civilian protests as a cover for terrorist activities. The Israeli government maintained that their actions were necessary for national security. The situation escalated rapidly, with Hamas firing rockets into Israel and Israel responding with airstrikes on Gaza. The cycle of retaliation quickly spiraled out of control. A full-blown war was now unavoidable, marking another tragic chapter in the seemingly intractable Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The human cost of this conflict continues to mount, with no clear resolution in sight. The war began on October 7, 2023, with a surprise attack by Hamas. Palestinian militants infiltrated Israeli territory, catching Israeli forces off guard. The militants targeted both military installations and civilian communities, killing over 1,000 Israelis and taking numerous hostages. This unprecedented assault sent shockwaves through Israel, exposing vulnerabilities in its defense system. Israel, reeling from the attack, launched Operation Iron Swords, a military campaign aimed at crippling Hamas's military capabilities and leadership. Intense airstrikes pounded Gaza, targeting rocket launchers, tunnels, and command centers. The Israeli Defense Forces also mobilized ground troops along the Gaza border, preparing for a potential ground invasion. The world watched with bated breath as the conflict escalated, fearing a humanitarian disaster in the making. As the war raged on, the humanitarian situation in Gaza deteriorated rapidly. Gaza, already a densely populated and impoverished territory due to the long-standing Israeli blockade, was ill-equipped to handle the onslaught. The relentless airstrikes and artillery fire caused widespread destruction, reducing homes, hospitals, and schools to rubble. The Palestinian death toll soared, with thousands of civilians, including women and children, caught in the crossfire. Hospitals, overwhelmed with casualties and facing shortages of essential medical supplies, struggled to cope. The United Nations reported a dire humanitarian crisis, warning of a looming catastrophe if aid did not reach those in need. Echoes of atrocity, allegations of war crimes. Amidst the fog of war, accusations of war crimes and human rights abuses mounted against both sides. Human rights organizations accused Israel of using disproportionate force, targeting civilian infrastructure, and employing white phosphorus munitions, a highly controversial incendiary weapon. The high civilian death toll in Gaza fueled international outrage and condemnation of Israel's tactics. Hamas, too, faced accusations of war crimes. Their indiscriminate rocket fire into Israeli civilian areas, the use of human shields, and the summary executions of captured Israeli soldiers were widely condemned. The United Nations Human Rights Council called for an independent investigation into all alleged violations of international law, seeking to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. A world divided, the international response. The 2023 Gaza war once again exposed the deep divisions within the international community regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United States, Israel's staunchest ally, reiterated its unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself, while urging de-escalation. European countries, while condemning Hamas's attacks, expressed concern over the high civilian death toll in Gaza and urged restraint from Israel. Arab states, already grappling with internal challenges and shifting alliances, found themselves in a delicate position. While condemning the violence and calling for a ceasefire, they were wary of appearing to side with Hamas, which many considered a terrorist organization. The Arab League, often divided on key issues, struggled to formulate a unified response, reflecting the complexity of the geopolitical landscape. Broken promises, ceasefires, and their violations. As the death toll mounted and international pressure intensified, Egypt brokered a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. The ceasefire, however, proved fragile and short-lived. Both sides accused each other of violating the terms of the agreement, with sporadic rocket fire from Gaza and retaliatory airstrikes from Israel continuing to disrupt the fragile peace. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza, meanwhile, worsened, with aid agencies struggling to deliver essential supplies due to the ongoing security risks and restrictions imposed by Israel. The repeated breakdown of ceasefires underscored the deep mistrust and the lack of political will to find a lasting solution to the conflict. Beyond the rubble, the long road to peace. As the dust settled on the 2023 Gaza war, the devastating consequences were evident. The conflict had left an indelible mark on the landscape and the people. Thousands lay dead, countless others were injured, and the already fragile infrastructure of Gaza lay in ruins. The humanitarian crisis was overwhelming. The war left behind a trail of trauma, displacement, and despair, deepening the cycle of violence and hatred. Families were torn apart and communities shattered. The international community, despite expressing concern and calling for a peaceful resolution, seemed powerless to break the deadlock. Diplomatic efforts often fell short. The two-state solution, once seen as the only viable path to peace, appeared more distant than ever. Hopes for reconciliation were fading. The 2023 Gaza war served as a stark reminder of the human cost of this intractable conflict and the urgent need for a just and lasting peace that addresses the legitimate aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians. The road to peace remains long and arduous, but it is a journey that must be undertaken.